What is up, YouTube? Jason here, and I'm back today with more of Orwell's 1984, right? So I just read chapter 6, and here is where Orwell first makes mention of Winston's, we get a bit more revealed about Winston's past, right? That he was once married. We wouldn't think this. He has no children, but he was once married to a woman named Catherine. But their marriage lacked, but now they're separated. Their marriage lacked sex and I guess real intimacy. She apparently, so in Oceania, it's hard to find women and perhaps men that it's ingrained in them, and it's not their faults. It's ingrained in them from an early age that sex is something as it's a chore, right? It's something that just simply has to be done for the continuation of the species. So you have more working class and more party members there to serve Big Brother, obviously, right? But yeah, he described her as she didn't resist, and she didn't really get into it either, but rather submitted when they would be having sex. She rather would submit, and he says this was embarrassing. And so this chapter is really fascinating. What's fascinating about it, also about Orwell's writing style, I'd like to comment. And this is sort of based on my own writing style. Sometimes I have a tough time, and you may just even be able to tell if you watch any of my videos. I digress often, right? And, there's sort of maybe this unconscious propensity to digress and explain every nook and cranny of my mind, of what's going into my thoughts, and just every detail, but not describe necessarily, but also to describe it in a way that perhaps may be perceived as artistic. Sometimes I think it's just perhaps serve my ego. How can I say this simple sentence in the most roundabout, buttfuck, artistic, right? Quote, in quotations, artistic way possible, way imaginable. And sometimes that's obviously not efficient. That lacks efficiency, but then sometimes, the reader can just get bogged down by this grandiloquent speech. And Orwell is concise, but sometimes in that, in plain language that is direct, exactly what he's saying. But sometimes it's enough just to have an understanding of what's going on. If you have quite a deep understanding of this, social game, social performance, that Orwell, he has a vision. He gives it to us direct, and there's explanatory sentences that just illuminate so much, and he doesn't have to phrase these in some metaphorical way. Of course, metaphor is a very powerful tool, but sometimes just articulating it, straightforward, it is enough to be profound. You don't have to use all these literary tools, right? Or these literary devices. Sorry, I'm walking. You don't have to utilize all these literary devices, all these varying literary devices, and like I said, try to come up with the most artistic way of phrasing something and digress to the point of beating the hell out of a dead carcass, you're beating the hell out of a dead carcass by the end of your digression. And that, like I say, that can end up boring the reader. And I've already done that. I mean, not in the point of being artistic, but I've digressed. Sometimes it's best just to stay on track. So I applaud Orwell in that. And, perhaps I was told by a creative writing teacher that Hemingway is very much like that window pane style writing. Sorry, I just walked up a hill. I'm a bit out of breath, plus I'm talking. But this window pane style writing, where he's just writing sort of what he sees. So perhaps Orwell, I don't know if we get as much imagery, right? But there's a lot to be explained in terms of how this world operates. And Orwell does a fabulous job in fitting it all on the canvas and arranging the pieces, the different variables in a way that makes sense. And I've mentioned that, I've hinted at that before. I'm trying to sort of solidify this talent, what this talent looks like in my mind. It's concise, but like I said, profound. So it's concise, but yeah, sometimes. Anyway, okay. So instead of sort of musing on that and ruminating about that, Orwell's talents as a writer, let's just jump back in to the book. So, we learned that Winston had a past sex life. What he's doing in this chapter part 1, chapter 6, right? We're learning about how men, or people in the party, you have another thing such as prostitution, and this is allowed more so among the proles, among the working class. It's not sanctioned, but it's not strictly enforced and strictly punished, harshly punished. Rather it's one of those things you get away with it for the most part, I guess, or so it sounds. But yeah, Winston, sorry, that scared me. Yeah, Winston is writing about engaging in prostitution, and and this happens intermittently, just randomly over the course of years. He may go, I guess, perhaps once these desires sort of build up, have no outlet, and then you go and you find a prostitute and you lay down with her. So he's sort of, writing this in his journal. And he's recording this, right? And what's interesting about this chapter is, we learn that Winston once had a wife, but we learn that women, like I said, sex is viewed more as a chore because it's ingrained in them. Women, and I guess men, especially women from an early age, that, he says, it's not love that is sort of outlawed, but rather eroticism, right? Sort of individual, a way that, eroticism, like something that arouses sexual desire outside of the act itself, I guess. Expressions of individuality that are what's it called? That are inspired in part by sexuality. So expressions of individuality, that inspired by sexuality, one's sexuality. It's a way of displaying sexuality. in perhaps a unique, creative way. And right, there is no foreplay. There's no, like I say, foreplay or sort of preliminary dance, right, amongst couples, where they are allowed to seduce one another and sort of work each other up to the point of becoming excited about the act of sex. It's also said that people that are attracted to one another, these people are not allowed to be married. So obviously, we see evidence of Big Brother trying to take the human element out of sex, right? Trying to take also the human element, but also pleasure out of sex. It's supposed to be viewed more as a chore. In the book, it says like an enema. And it talks about artificial insemination. Even though Winston, it sounded like they would try once a week to have a baby. His wife called it, I think, baby making or something else. Our performing our duty. Right? And when you make it sound like that, like sex isn't, it's something obviously that both consenting adults should want to partake in, not only for love, but for lust, right? There's attraction, physical and perhaps emotional, mental attraction that is occurring, and it drives each adult, each person to express their love, their lust, their feelings for one another in the act of sex, right? In intercourse. And that's also an expression of individuality, which is why, we see eroticism sort of being outlawed and, disregarded, and trying, and there are, of course, institutions, cultural institutions, right? Societal institutions, such as the Anti-Sex League, what else, that, will sort of brainwash, indoctrinate people from a very early age and onward to look at sex in a very particular, specific light, as a duty, as a chore, for the mere purpose of begetting children, and that is it, right? And I forget the other quote that I was thinking of touching on. Anyway, so Winston, he towards the end of this chapter, it's comical, but also perhaps maybe, I don't know, shameful, but sad, right? Winston, and apparently there's quite a lot of women, quite a lot of proles that are willing to sell their bodies, oftentimes for something very cheap, such as gin. This is how deprived of sex, of feeling, of just common goods, right? That these people are, that a woman's willing to sell her body for a bottle of gin to drink, and escape such a hellscape as Airstrip 1 for a few hours or for a night. But anyway, So yeah, Winston is describing it's dark, right? But then a lamp is turned on and sort of illuminates, lightens, gives light to the scene, gives light to the setting, and we see a woman with makeup, white makeup caked on her face, very thick, that it almost looks as though it's cracking. He says like it's a cardboard mask. I guess perhaps we can see the creases, right? And almost like cracks in the makeup, where it's beginning to sort of split apart down the seams, I guess. And he obviously, in the light, he can begin to make out her features. And what does he see? He sees, and Winston is a lot younger. He sees wrinkles. He sees that she is obviously old, and her mouth is slightly ajar, and what he sees is contrasted against this, white makeup and perhaps red lipstick, crimson lips, is just a void of cavernous, a cavernous void of blackness, right? In her, being her mouth, no teeth, right? And just really a description that represents her old age, or a woman in her, elder years. And she herself has found herself whoring, selling her body for probably not even just goods or money, but also just in the act itself as prostitution, just an escape from like I said, such slavery, right? That's not even viewed as that. They're tricked into believing that their duty as, citizens, I gotta cross this road, as citizens, they're tricked into believing that their duty is to be a slave and to serve Big Brother, and from an early age up until the point of their death. And when somebody is hung at the gallows for having a sexual desire, or maybe not, whatever the case is, right? Outward displays of individuality, and or whatever the crime may be. This is something to applaud about, rather than to hang your head in shame for the country that you live, and how you are maybe an active participant in perpetuating such a violent and backward state. So, and that's really how it goes, is once you have, sort of arranged the education system in a way that, benefits your point of view and the ideology that you wish to spew and to push, there isn't much. And then once institutions are there as safeguards, meant to protect the spewing of such ideology and the eradicating of any alternative, banned forms of banned viewpoints, essentially, there is not much stopping such a government from, turning humanity into a group of zombified, slaves, stillborns, right? That know only one thing, which is to sort of hang their head and move forward in the herd towards, towards the labor, towards like the labor camp, and where they may be their work, where they may be farmed and eventually killed in time. Anyway, sorry. But yeah, so I think what what the purpose of this was. But anyway, yeah. So Winston realizes he's about to have sex with this old woman, no teeth, right? And perhaps she's a bit repulsive, but he goes through with it, he says, and perhaps he's a bit embarrassed and finds this shameful, but I think it more so outlines how shameful this party is, and that people's sexuality is suppressed to the point that they find themselves in seedy, dark corners, having sex with strangers just as a way of, feeling human for a moment in time. And I read the first sentence, from the next chapter, and I found this very profound. I didn't read chapter 7, I believe it is, but I read obviously the first sentence because just as happenstance, obviously because I had just finished the chapter, so I was just sort of previewing what I'd be getting into myself, what I'd be getting into next, what I'd be reading next. And the first sentence is, Winston felt, or, he says, I think he's recording this in his diary, that if there is any hope, it lies with the proles. If there is any hope, it lies with the proles. There is something liberating, there is something free that still roams free in the working class, because the working class is they are the ones. First off, there's strength in numbers, right? And the proles make up the overwhelming majority of the population, but also these are the men and women who still retain not agency in terms of how they conduct themselves, not behavioral agency, but rather not external agency, but rather internal agency. And I mean psychological agency, the way that they think. Perhaps they have not been so indoctrinated. Perhaps there is a chance for disillusionment to occur. And so the sort of the walls, the mirage that Big Brother puts up in front of, that erects in front of their eyes. Perhaps there is hope that fissure may give way to light behind such a mirage of obviously built upon, that's made up of lies and false truths and doublethink, etc. And they're able to see past this mosaic of manipulation, to see the light that shines beyond. If they could just tear, of course, if this was not in their way, if this was not standing in their way, what would be possible? And that is perhaps because, why does hope lie within the proles? These are the people that are, sort of still engaging in taboo, right? The proles are almost, if there would be, a counterculture in Oceania. Perhaps not, but perhaps so. Like, I don't know how else to think about it. And they're sort of cast off by Big Brother. They're not obviously as important as the party members, but what this means is they're not watched so closely, and their crimes aren't as hardly aren't felt as so damning, right? And so insipid, or because these are the people that you would expect to misbehave. And so therefore like I said, they retain some psychological agency, because through the taboo life that perhaps some of them lead, such as in the acts of prostitution. And that's funny to think about, that prostitution may equal liberation. But that's because when sex is forced underground, and sexual desire and eroticism is suppressed, you have things such as prostitution, which pops up and sort of propagates or spreads, as a way of sort of meeting, this desire, right? Meeting the needs of such desires. So yeah, hope lies with the working class, who may, find disillusionment in their dismantle, right? Like in their unconforming, or by their not conforming, right? Not totally conforming. So I found that interesting, and we're at 27 minutes. I think it's a good chapter. I'm going to keep reading. I haven't been reading as much because I've been working like a dog, in some 50 hours a week, but what's hard about that is I'm working 2 jobs now. So 50 hours a week at one job, like, okay, that's not that bad, but if you can keep on a routine. But I'm not used to waking up so early. And so now I'm having to wake up because I'm substituting. And so, yeah, it's just having to get up, and then, at 6:30 a.m. and then go work all day at the schools, and then go to, my other job right after that, and then turn around and do it again the next day. Where, my other job, I don't get off at 11. So yeah, that can be exhausting, but anyway, it feels good to have gotten some good rest the past 2 nights, and to have read and made a video. I have Chipotle in hand, so I'm gonna make my way back to my house and eat, and enjoy this free time I have until I have to go to work. And I'm off the next 2 days after today, so some more reading will commence, and perhaps another video will be made. But thank you guys for watching, if so, and have a good day. I'll see you later.